Bobby, thank you for joining us on the Spirit Farm podcast.
So nice to be here. It's wonderful to be invited, and I'm excited to chat today.
A good friend, Michelle, introduced us. She's an old friend from Orange County days. And here you are in Orange County, in Newport Beach, coming to us live via the Zoom technologies. And I see behind you, you already told me what it is, but I want our audience to be able to understand what this is. You have a ginormous wall that is painted by your kids, right?
A little tour. Should I take him over there?
Yeah, sure. For the people watching on YouTube or watching the video.
Yeah, so this is a big wall in the office that I had my boys go to town and have the freedom and do whatever they want to do, and it turned out pretty cool. And as we were talking about it, it's a great reminder of them and what I'm here to do, and also how destructive they can be with paint.
It looks fantastic. It's actually very cool. And you mentioned that you have something similar at home, and not just your boys, but whoever comes over can throw down on the art wall.
Yeah. The inception actually was that for this, which we wanted to just have an outlet for ourselves in a way that, like we were talking about before, I wanted to remove as much of the limitations and rules from them, especially being little boys. So we have a wall in the dining room where you can paint anything you want. There's painting supplies sitting there, and they started it. But anyone that comes over, not that many people come over these days, but anyone that comes over has the access to do whatever they want. And it's kind of amazing, Caleb, that when you allow for that to happen, and don't put any pressure on anyone, amazing things happen. Like people write inspirational quotes either for themselves or to anyone that reads it, or they just draw whatever they want to draw, or just doodle or whatever it might be, and they just kind of lose themselves in that, which is sometimes what I find my boys doing is, I walk into the dining room and they're just painting something, and it could be something funny or just kind of like in deep thought. And I think that's the wonderful thing about that experiment and what we've done here at the office is when you give someone that chance to kind of just be themselves and remove the barriers as much as you can, it's therapeutic, and it's wonderful to see what they come up with. So we love it.
Well, what have you noticed, Bobby, from in your home since you started this experiment, since you decided, hey, we're going to do this inspirational art wall that the boys and anyone else can just go to town? What's changed in the environment, in the home, or how do you feel people engage in your home differently?
Well, it's definitely eye-catching. You walk into that room and all of a sudden there's this giant wall that has every color you can imagine on it. And, it's surprising because usually you don't see that in someone's home. So I think it's nice to shock people in that sense, kind of wake them up, and then to be able to engage them in a way that they haven't been engaged, I think, in many aspects of their lives. So that's the wonderful thing is for them, because I don't tell people, it's like, oh, you're going to come over and you're going to see this thing. So when someone sees it and their initial surprise and the initial reaction to it is wonderful. And then you can see the wheels turning and saying, oh, what would I do? Because I tell them they can do whatever they can. Wow. And, they'll be like, oh, no, I'm fine. And then a few minutes later, you catch them doing something. So it's just it seems like it removes something from them, and it gives them a freedom that they didn't think was possible, which is so odd to say because it's not a big deal, but that process is pretty cool to observe.
I can totally see that, because I think we stop believing that we're artists at a young age, right? It kind of gets beat out of us in the elementary school years. Then all of a sudden there's just a few kids that show promise and they're artists, right. And everybody else is like, oh yeah, our art isn't really my thing, which is ridiculous.
100% of the time people say, oh, I don't paint or I don't draw. And it's like, it's not about that. It's really about just having an outlet and having something go through you. And it's pretty remarkable when people take that up and you can see that they're removing some of those barriers within themselves, what comes out, and they surprise themselves in the process, which the impetus was for my voice to have that opportunity to feel like, oh, you're not watching over me. Oh no, what if I do it wrong? And it's like, there's no wrong, there's no right, there's no nothing. It's just a matter of you having an opportunity to have this. So it's been pretty cool.
And how old are your boys?
Good God. It seems like there's so many of them. They're 9 and 12 now. They're 9 and 12. Yeah.
9 and 12. And
Yeah.
you mentioned that this art wall is kind of representative of the work that you do. And you've got the Fodada hat on,
Good
and
marketing.
that's
Forgot.
it is. It is. It's a good looking hat. So explain Fodada and how the art wall kind of aligns and what it is that you're doing.
Sure. Sure. I think that the opportunity and actually being able to have the courage to do such a thing or these kind of projects all comes from the inception point of this journey that we've been on now for 9 years, which is Fodada. And it all came from a place where um, really understanding how much more opportunity we have and trying to realize what we can do with that. And it sounds vague and somewhat nebulous in that sense, but it truly was the case that when I became a father for the first time with my oldest, who's now 12, I came from a great household. My parents are amazing parents and I love them, but they're traditional and conservative. And I was raised in a household where the lines of responsibility between the genders was very obvious. And I'm a breadwinner and I provide and I protect and I teach you how to throw the ball and all those stereotypical things. There's nothing wrong with having that opportunity to be with your male figure in your life. And then mom was the caretaker and fed us and took care of us and all those different things. So when I was, I always thought I was going to be a dad. There was no question in my mind that I was going to be a father. But I thought that's the path that I was going to go down. I was going to be that sort of a dad. And there was, there's nothing wrong with that. But once I became a dad and actually the process happened, it just completely ran me over because it broke down all those thoughts that I had almost immediately, because I was so enamored by what we've been able to do as humans and procreate and have another human being be a result of you. And it just made me think so much about what I wanted to do and what I wanted to get involved. So I threw myself 100% in. I had flexibility in my job at the time where I could spend more time at home. So I was with my son almost every day. And we did everything.
What were you doing for work at the time?
I was in a consulting business that was in software consulting globally. And I was running the operations side of the business for Europe and Asia. So I had flexibility in doing those things and how I did it because I've been doing it for over 10 years. So I had a team behind me that was doing a lot of great work. So it was kind of like managing that. So it allowed me to do that.
And were you in Orange County at the time?
Yes. In the same neighborhood, actually. In the same neighborhood, the same things.
Yeah.
But that process of spending more time with my son, it unveiled and sort of took away a lot of the initial thoughts that I had about fatherhood and what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
Because I saw that I was getting so much from the experience. We're taught that you provide, you protect, you take him to practice, you do all these things, but the narrative really wasn't around, well, what do I get from it? And it became very obvious very early on that I was changing. I was becoming a different person, different perspective, and really learning about myself, which in turn would allow me to be a better dad for my son. So it was this wonderful cycle that was happening. And I also realized through the process that some of my friends and some of the people that I've known for a long time, they were also the same way, but they didn't feel comfortable publicly showing that and displaying it because the social standard for it was not really there. That oh, you're all in, you're doing all the things that we said the gender is not supposed to do or not supposed to be involved with.
And so when you say that they didn't feel as comfortable, are you talking, some of the gender stereotypes? Are you talking like affection? Are you talking like making breakfast? Are you talking helping with homework? Like,
absolutely, all those things that we'd say stereotypically was, you have camps for dads and camps for moms as far as what the responsibilities are. I would see after I would be vocal about, my gosh, like I've been doing this or I did that, or I was up with him all night because he wasn't feeling well, or I'm I got to go and get more diapers or whatever, things that you don't necessarily hear. Now we're at a much better place than we were, 12 years ago. But they would hear that and feel comfortable to open up and say, oh yeah, I did this or I do that. And I also do this or whatever it might be. And I thought to myself, I would have never known. I
Mm,
didn't know you were this kind of dad. And I didn't know you felt this comfortable about it. And I can tell when you talk about it, there's a passion behind what you say. And you're talking from a different place than when we're having just very light conversation. It goes to a different level. And I can feel that you're so connected. It doesn't mean so much to you, but you don't feel comfortable publicly being open about it. And why is that? So that really was the point where I said, wait a minute, we're missing out on something. And why does the family unit have to be tilted this way, where we feel like the burden of this part of life is primarily on the mom, and the dad is providing just this other side of it and not really necessarily involved in this? And
yeah.
how much are we missing out on the
Yeah.
growth process for that father, the process for the child itself, the partner and what they're getting from it, and the product that spills into the community, right? The kid
Yeah.
goes to school with other kids. We go to work with other people. We are in communities with other folks that we socialize with. And if we can lift that just incrementally, I think it would have tremendous dividends. And
Yeah.
that's really the thought was, how can I do that?
I like that. And in your scenario, what's mom's involvement like?
In our family,
Yeah.
yeah, it's truly 50-50 fluid, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
there's no line, right? We are tackling everything together. Sometimes it sways this way or that way, but it's sort of
Yeah.
like covering each other as need to be. But we're both all in, and I think that's wonderful for us because it allows both sides to feel like they can be as involved and engaged. And then sometimes it's life, and it's you being a human, and
Yeah.
sometimes you want to pull back a little bit and you want more, and if
Yeah.
you can have a partnership with someone where you can do that and you can be the puzzle piece for each other that works for this, then I think that's the best way. Does it always work? Of course not. But I think that we at least have the intent for it to be something that
Yeah.
it's completely cooperative and collaborative, and something that's in the best interest of not only our kids but ourselves as parents and people.
What does she say about how she's seen you transform over these
Yeah.
last 12 years and then 9 years since you've been doing Fodada? How would she describe your journey, your evolution, your growth, and now kind of waving this flag for men?
I don't want to speak for her, but from her complimentary words that she said, and she's very, very complimentary about this journey for me, which is wonderful to have that sort of partner
Yeah.
in raising your kids. Is that, yeah, I've gone through a complete evolution, and that's not stopping. It's one
Mm,
of those things where I prescribed to everything society was telling me, and what you sort of are set as expectations in society up until that point. And
mm,
then obviously it's an inflection and it's a pivot from there that continued and then hockey sticked
yeah.
after
Yeah.
this journey began, which is it truly is. And I think some people will get this, some people won't. It's surreal in the sense that when you allow yourself to see things differently, whatever it is that you're doing, and you change your perspective, it only allows for additional perspective change and change in general, right? So
Yeah.
it's not a path that has a summit. It's a summit that then unveils so many other summits point
Mm,
past that point that you say, I now see that. So in some ways it's something that can be overwhelming, because as they say, ignorance is bliss in some ways,
right.
right? But when you allow yourself, which I am trying to do, and I have a lot of progress to be had, but I've come a long way. And I think she agrees with the fact that I let that happen. I risked and I took that step and I went down this path, which was very different than what I was doing before. And as a result of it, I'm much better suited to be who I should be as a parent and
Mm.
then as a person, period. And that path and that journey continues.
I love it. I love it, Bobby. And when you say much more suited to be the person that I should be or that I want to be. As you look back at who you were 12 years ago and who you are today, do you feel more content, more happy, more alive? What does that look like in your life?
I would say I have a much better idea of what I want to spend my energy and effort towards.
Hmm.
And I have a much better understanding of the waves in my life. And I'll explain that. That is, I think we all have, highs and lows.
Hmm.
Those are not going to go away. And I think in most cases, our peaks and valleys are really high and low, and they're far apart. And what I've really attempted to do through this process and really using this energy that I get from this journey is that I understand that they're going to exist, but I try not to have them surprise me. And I try to bring them closer together. They're never
Mm-hmm.
going to go away. And
Yeah.
to have a perspective which is not A to B, but really more of a sphere uh, that has no entry and no exit, and there's no start or beginning, but it's really an area that I feel comfortable in to
Mm-hmm.
operate within, and I can exit and enter as I wish. And again,
Mm-hmm.
some of this talk to some people may be like, I don't understand what you're saying, but it's really worked for me. It's really opened my eyes into seeing things differently. So as far as happiness goes, um, to be quite honest with you, I've looked to remove that as a word that I use to describe myself, because I don't think it's about being happy or unhappy. It's really about understanding and appreciating what's around you and how you then want to position yourself around whatever it is that you're coming in contact with.
Yeah. So replacing the word happiness, what is it that how do you describe it?
Yeah, it's. I think for me, it's more of a more of how I react to something or how I operate in a scenario,
Okay.
right? So if I find myself that I'm reacting in a way where the waves are too high and too low, that means I'm not where I want to be.
Okay.
That's something that's triggered me in a way that I didn't want to be triggered, and that's going to happen. And again, that goes
Okay.
back to not being surprised by that. But my intent is, as I continue this journey, to have a better feel for anything that's coming my way, and not necessarily dictating that path,
Yeah.
but being open and available to what that path is allowing me to do, which is exactly this journey and this business, and how it's sort of engulfed our lives and what I'm trying to do with it. So it's so far it's allowing me what I want, and in how someone would say good and the bad and the tough and the remarkable. So all those things are sort of mashed together.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. And I'm intrigued. So I'm going to continue to go at this. I hope it's not
Sure.
like
No,
annoying.
not at all.
The high, when you say high and low, I just want to understand, are you thinking is high like positive, or are you, and low is like depressed, or is high more like animated and low is not animated and you're shooting for steady and peaceful? How do you frame that?
I would say the low would be when you feel that you're overwhelmed and you have a tremendous burden on yourself, right? And you
Got
have
it.
burdens, right? So you feel like, oh my gosh, the weight of the world, as people say, is like it's on you. And what people like to say is like just keep getting bombarded with stuff,
Yeah.
right? And the other side, it would be that you're just like on cloud nine and you feel like everything is just magical and it's just everything works out exactly as you want and you feel like you can do no wrong.
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of trying to bring those together and not feeling either side um, as you would otherwise, and understanding that yes, you are going to go through these dips and you're going to go through that, and having be something is it's almost like watching a surfer that's gliding through a crazy sets of waves, or the conditions out are really bad, but you can just see them, they're just maneuvering through it without being uh, without overreacting or
Yeah.
without being, in a calm sense. It doesn't mean that they're
Yes.
still not applying everything they know to it, but the way they're going through it, or you see an athlete, or you see someone that is like doing what they do and they're just moving through it
Yeah.
as smoothly as they can. Doesn't mean that they don't react, but they're just seeing what's coming at them and allowing themselves to sort of flow through it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's kind of a like a present moment grounding, it seems. and in the illustrations that you provided, where you're, for an athlete, they might feel like they're in the zone. For a surfer, they might just feel like they're just kind of in touch with the rhythm of the waves. Yeah, I get it. That makes a lot of sense. And then so that's been a big part of this journey, and shrinking kind of the highs and the lows and operating more in that zone, that sweet spot. And then 9 years ago, you started Fodada. Am I saying it
Correct.
right?
Yeah, yeah. And the name, I think you may have seen. The name comes from my oldest, who, when I decided to do this, when my second son was about to be born, and I thought, I need to do something about this. I don't want to. I don't want to 30 years from now look my boys in the eyes and my story be something that I wanted to tell them rather than something that I can tell them and have them experience with me.
Hmm.
So I decided to take a risk and say we're going to do something about this relationship that I think has so much in it, and it can be so empowering to those that touch it. So I sat him down. He was 3 years old,
Hmm.
and I said, "Pierce, Daddy's going to do this," and I explained the whole concept to him. And he said, and this is referencing something that we always go through when he was about 1.5 or so learning to speak. He would always grab stuff when I would get home and bring it to me, and he would go, "Fodada, for Daddy," like he was bring me something. So when I explained this to him and I said, "This is for dads and all this stuff that they're going to be experiencing with their kids," he said, "How about Fodada?" And I said, "Wow, you're 3 years old." So, and yeah,
Genius.
he reminds me of that many times. Uh, yeah.
You owe me, Dad.
Oh,
This
yeah.
whole brand, my idea.
Absolutely. We have to go to court for that one. But yeah, so that was a point. That was the reason why we named it that. And then the journey really began. We decided to, I wanted to be something that's available to people and not have it be just conceptual and not be something that is just based on the merits of the work that we were doing, but we wanted to be very comfortable because I knew some of the people that we're trying to reach out to, they were uncomfortable with this conversation. They didn't feel like they needed, and some people are deeply hurt by this and have resentments about their father in their life or lack of a father in their lives or being a dad or not being able to be a dad and all those things. So we wanted to reach people in a way that we thought was going to be comfortable and accessible and something that already is part of their dynamic. And that's why we went with clothing, was to produce a clothing line that we thought was high quality, accessible, and we can ingrain the message in there because most people, wear clothes, not a lot of nudists these days. And if you give someone something they love, they're going to wear it. And we don't realize this, but clothing is actually closer to us than our loved ones. It touches us all day long. So if that can bring that feeling of comfort and remind you of the message very, very lightly, then you will think about it. And if you think about it, and I say, "Caleb, I like that hoodie that you're wearing," you will then maybe share with me a story and say, "Oh, this is from this company that does this."
Yeah.
And I might share a story with you about my journey with my father or me as a father or the concept of fatherhood or whatever that might be. And that's exactly what we want, is which what we started talking about was how do we change perspective and create dialogue that can help that. And it's really for that reason. So we started with that in 9 years ago, amazingly. And it kind of took off from there, to be quite honest with you. We got some immediate positive feedback for what we were doing. And we went through many iterations and many different ways of looking at the business, from celebrities that were wearing our stuff to being in stores and, giant mess of fulfillment, all those, supply chain and all those things. And now we brought it to a place where I think we're in our sweet spot. And as you may have noticed, we've expanded the business sort of in two sides of it, which is one side is our retail side of that really supports this father and child relationship and the positive impact that comes through it, which we then put on the programs for free around the world. And the other side, because of our retail side, we had so many people come to us and say, "Can you do this for our brand?" And to me initially was, well, relationships are relationships. And if we can provide positive impact as far as a company and their employees, a brand and the consumer, an organization and the community, then why not? Why not be agents of that and allow for that to happen? So We have two sides of the business. It's complete madness. There's no single day that everything goes the same way. I mean, it's unbelievable, the conversations and the things that we're involved with. And I still have to pinch myself to think about some of the things that we've been able to accomplish. But it's absolutely been incredible. And I've told people this many times: if someone comes tomorrow or today and says, you got to shut down, you're done. I would not be more proud of the work that we've done. And I would not be able to replace the amazing things that I've been able to do with my kids as a result of this, and the conversations that we've had and what we've been able to experience. I'd be completely satisfied with that.
I love it. I want to come back to that and kind of like the present day scenario and even the entrepreneurial journey. But let's go back for a moment and start with, did you have any clothing experience when you decided to jump into this, or did you just like the idea of clothes being as close to you, touching your skin, and you just said, we're doing it?
Yeah, no experience besides being a consumer.
Sure.
But what I did know is that I didn't want to come to you and say, Caleb, this is really important to me. Can you give me 25 bucks? I wanted to give you something that extended our conversation and it wasn't close-ended. So I wanted you to take something home that you said, I really like this. And, oh, that's kind of interesting. And okay, I'm going to keep using it. And while I use it, every time there's some connection, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, to the message that, we always say we want to be on your, favorite 5 of whatever it is that you're wearing. And if that rotation continues, then we have so many messages from people that say, every time I wear this, someone says, hey, what is that? And I talk to them about this. And I love that I can tell the story and I can change the story and I can tell whatever I want. And that's why we did that.
Your favorite 5 to be in the rotation. That's really smart. And I have one of your shirts. I have the one that has crowns on it.
Oh, wonderful. One of my favorites.
It's fantastic and it's very comfortable and it fits well. Great. And so I see what it is that you're going for, and that totally makes sense. So you put something on, even if you just put it on because it's comfortable or it's next up in the rotation, you subconsciously, it's happening. You're like, you see the crowns, you're like, okay, there's something about, elevating dads here. And then when that conversation is started with someone, then you have brand ambassadors.
Yep, you really do. And they do it. The beautiful part about it is we don't push anything out. We don't say, hey, can you please talk about us? It's do it as you wish. You want to think about it, think about it. If you want to just go out there and show people something that they think about, wonderful. If you want to be, someone that vocally wants to engage people regarding what you're wearing or what you're thinking about the mission, wonderful. It's all up to you how you do it, when you want to do it.
And so, okay, you didn't have a clothing background, but you like the idea of exchanging. So here's something, this is going to keep us on your body and in your brain. I'm not going to be a nonprofit that just asks for money, but we're going to have an exchange here of value. And you had been in software sales. So just give me a little bit of a glimpse on that, like behind the scenes journey of, I'm good at making money over here, but my heart is pulling me in this direction. What was it like? Conversation, even just at home, and the practical nature of we're going all in on this and we're going to pursue this dream.
Yeah. I think this is a different entrepreneurial journey because it was so deeply rooted in passion and something that I was going through at the moment with my son and the journey that I was having with him. That it was in the works since day one that he joined us. So I really began thinking about and then it just kind of kept building and building and building. And I would say probably a year before we took off and actually committed to making this happen, I knew that I had to do something. Actually, it was when we knew that we were going to have our second child. It was sort of the wake up call for me. It's like, you got to do this now, right? You got to do this now, or it's going to be something where you say, oh, I'll get to it. I want to do this, or it'd be nice for me to do that. And it was a big risk because it was such a shift from what I was doing, super like corporate.
Yeah.
world, which is a wonderful thing. And I have no regrets from that, but it was just one of those things that it all came to to the right time. And entrepreneurs know this. It's like there's really no right time, but because you have to take a giant risk and really have to be okay with that. But I was okay with it because I was not okay with, like I was saying before, it's different in this case because my my board members were my boys, and I was not okay with sitting in a room with them and telling them that I didn't do it,
Yeah.
even though they would have no idea what I'm talking about. I
Yeah.
could not live with myself and say I should have done that. And
Yeah.
I'm so grateful that they don't even know, but they compelled me to make this move because it's meant so much to me. Um, and that really was, I think that's when I sat down to mom and I said, I'm going to do this first. She was very surprised, obviously, by the thought behind it. She was supportive, but obviously it's a giant shift
Yeah.
from what we were doing before. And I'm incredibly stubborn. So once I want to do something, I will do it.
Mm.
So we just went at it, and it was a rough go because, like you said, I had no experience. All I knew is I really enjoyed this experience, and I wanted to share it with people. And it sort of went through its iterations. And I don't know if you want to go down the path of the business side of it.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do that. Let's do that. Let me ask you,
yeah,
we'll make one comment because you said something that I think is important, that people would resonate with, which is, don't tell when you can show, right? I mean, I think a lot of parents, they want to tell their kids, oh, do your dreams. Oh, this is, but when you can show, at the end of the day, they're always going to be most impacted by what they see,
100%,
right?
100%.
And and you just drew a line in the sand and you said, I'm going to model this. And that doesn't mean that everyone needs to model entrepreneurship by any stretch of the imagination. But whatever that conviction is that's in your heart and soul, you better model that, and you don't want to tell them something that you didn't have the courage to do. And so I admire that about you and commend that in the journey. And then, yeah, share with us kind of the evolution of the business and what it looked like in the early stages that was challenging.
Yeah, it was exciting because, like I said, right off the bat, we got some celebrity support. We were able to work with some big brands at Equinox and some other places were carrying our line, which I had no idea how this process worked. So we were just like all in and going after it. And we were getting People Magazine, and we're getting called from ABC News to do interviews and all this stuff. And it was
And
so
is that just because you were hustling and you were just making 100 calls a day, or how did those kind of breakthrough things even happen?
that's a wonderful thing about this process is almost all of it has been organic, whether I've liked it or not. And it's just those were the things when I would see that there was traction in whichever area that we were working in that would tell me like, oh, there's something there. Like
Hmm.
this wasn't, I don't know when I started this that I knew that we were going to be doing it 9 years. Actually, I didn't think we were going to be doing it 9 years from when we incepted. And I thought it was going to be a wonderful thing for me to be able to do and be able to tell the story to my kids and say, look, we're going to do something here. And it's a nice story to be able to tell. But once we started actually doing the work and getting pummeled around as any
Hmm.
entrepreneur does, and really, really getting a bloody nose and figuring out the different things, the more I would get beat up, the more it would help me come to where I wanted to be, and actually would reinvigorate me to go back to the core message,
Hmm.
which was I really want this relationship to be something that people can extract so much from, right? Let's go back to this. You kind of divert back to these fun and sexy things that would come up and say, ooh, that's so fun. And then like, wait a minute, that's kind of taking me away from what I'm trying to do.
Right. Right.
So the early days are really about ping-ponging around and figuring out and making a ton of mistakes as any entrepreneur does. And we made them all, any way, shape, or form you can imagine. Until it came to a point where I saw that this was a much bigger opportunity than I had thought. And to go back to the beginning of our conversation about the paintings and allowing the limitations to be removed,
Hmm.
it's like I need to take those barriers out. This is not a typical business. This is not something that that's about P&L and not about, backlogs and forecasting and sticking to those things, because it doesn't operate that way, because my relationship with my children does not operate that way. It's not about those things. And I need to infuse the business with that and have it be the driver of what we're doing, and have it be about the right things where I can say, excuse me, that every single day I can say, I did right. I didn't do things for the sake of the bottom line, or making someone else happy, or appeasing the business world of how we run our business, because I'm not doing it for that. I'm not doing it for that. And if I do it for that, then I might as well not do this, because this job is not easy. It's a wonderful opportunity, but it's not an easy opportunity.
Yeah.
And I like the grind, and I like that I have to really use so many different facets of my thinking and my brain and strategy and all those different things. And the what we get back is the biggest payment I could ever ask for.
I love it.
So it was that moment where I said, you know what, I remember vividly this gentleman from one of the big four consulting firms found me on LinkedIn, and he reached out, and he was doing something, and he like tried to delve into the business, and he was asking me a lot of questions, and I was interested in what his feedback was. And he was a pretty high up member of that organization. And, God bless him. He at some point said, he's like, I don't think you're going to last much longer, and I'm like, you know what? If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, but I'm not going to change how we do things, because for him, it was so foreign to run a business in the way that we were doing it, which was very much based on what the community and the demand and the need was, rather than, we're gonna set this mark and we're gonna hit for these numbers, and
Right.
I got to make sure I go this way and not that way. So at that moment, and kind of taking that monkey off your back, it's incredibly energizing. And I think we started to kind of fall into our rhythm of how we need to do things, and how we help people, how we conduct ourselves, and what our brand means, and really allowing for that space to operate in the manner that we should. And that set the path for us to keep growing and being able to do exactly what we set forth to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And in that light, and kind of what you were created to do and what your brand is, talk about mental fitness, because I
Sure.
see prominent on your website is this idea of mental fitness. And then you list, I think it's 5 things that kind of go into how you frame mental fitness. And I assume that specifically kind of you're speaking to dads here. So what does that look like? And why are you passionate about, sharing this information with dads?
Yeah. So all the programs that we put on, they really come from a place of personal experience and something that I see that's a need, whether it's myself or in the communities that we associate with, and I see from people that connect with us and tell their stories. So it all comes. Are there hundreds more that we could do? Absolutely, there's no question. But when we put our mind and effort against something, it's something that we know that there's a need for, and we can actually do something about. So it's not for the sake of just doing it.
Yeah.
And I think mental fitness comes from a place where I wholeheartedly believe that the way that we are addressing things, which is more of a symptomatic approach, is your
As in like a culture.
correct. Our
Yeah.
society, your knee hurts, I'm gonna give you some Advil.
Yeah.
We don't really go back to the preventative, which is, why does my knee hurt, or what am I
Right.
doing that causing that? And I think when we talk about mental health, we talk about, as we should. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. It's about suicides and school shootings and depression and all the things that are very prevalent, and those need to be addressed. There's no question about it. But in my mind, is we need to go back, and we need to go back, and we need to take a step back, and we need to go to a point where we say, where are these being incepted? Where is it that we can actually have some traction and do something about? And I believe that the parent and child relationship, and we obviously addressing the father and child relationship, is incredibly impactful on how this path is then going forward, and how we can address mental health. Now, we know that men historically do not want to talk about this subject, because there's so much stigma attached to it, right? When you bring up, I think you might have read, when you say to someone, if you say, I went to the gym this morning, you say, good for you. Like, what did you do? How do you look? Great. Like, that's great that you're being healthy. But if you say to someone, I went and spoke to my therapist today, the first thought that comes out of your head is,
something's wrong with you.
yeah, something's wrong, right? So we're programmed to think seeking health, even though this thing between our ears controls everything we do. And we talk about athletes talk about the mental side of the game, and you talk about how you feel and how that's transferred into everything you do. We know how important it is, but still we say, oh, no, I have no problems, right? And it's always about problems rather than it's this muscle that you need to exercise and need to take care of so it can have less problems. So we wanted to change that narrative, that instead of looking at as mental health, let's look at it as mental fitness and saying, what are very, very easy things? Because I know as a male and as a father, you are so far away from this table, right? You're like, I don't want anything to do with this thing. I don't want to talk about my feelings or all this stuff that I've gone through all my life and all this burden and pressure that I feel. And if you open that door, who knows what's going to happen? So what we wanted to do was change the dialogue to fitness and making it things that they can feel as if they're the conduit to their kids. They're doing it for the sake of their children. And as you saw on the Mental Fitness 5 for Fathers, they're very simple things. And we said, if you can do this, then you can bring folks one step closer and they can say, well, this isn't so bad. I don't feel like I'm sitting with a shrink and they're asking me my childhood, but I'm doing something where it's conversation, it's acceptance, it's openness, it's allowing for that space for us to just go a little bit closer to it, right? And that's what we always talk about, is incremental growth and incremental steps towards being better, so you can be more preventative, so you can then allow for the bigger conversations to happen at some point where you say, this work that I did prior to this is now setting me up so we can have this conversation or get into deeper stuff, rather than my first conversation with my son is, what's wrong? What's going on with you? And it's like so combative and so strong, rather than let's just have conversation and dialogue and let me learn about you and let me teach you about me, which one of the biggest parts of the mental fitness campaign is having the dads open up and talk about themselves, talk about their experiences, likes and dislikes, their days. One of the big things I do with my boys is when they get in the car, which is one of the things, is I tell them about my day to start, which is kind of weird. When you think everyone that gets in the car, how was your day? Who'd you play with? What'd you learn? What are you doing? Like, it's all these like bombardments of questions rather than, this is what I did today.
Yeah.
Which in turn they say, oh, okay, you just opened up to me. You showed me that you care enough about me, that I'm enough of a person and have enough mental capacity to be able to have that.
Yeah.
And then you're giving me that respect. I'm going to give you some respect back and tell you about things that are going on in my life.
Yeah.
Which is incredible as a dad, for me to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And then for them, like a few days later, they go, hey, what happened with that thing? You go, oh my gosh, you're listening to me. And I feel good about it. And I feel wonderful that you're doing that.
Yeah.
And they feel like, hey, I'm involved in my dad's life. Like, he's telling me things. Yeah. And I think those are the kind of things that allow you to then build that platform to then be able to, like I said, have harder conversations, or when there's that inception point, or not, it's an inflection point of them saying, should I talk to dad or not? Right? This is a difficult conversation, but if you have that,
you've laid that foundation.
Absolutely. It's so much easier to say, dad, I got to talk to you about something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than, we haven't really talked about stuff, or we don't really have this. So for me to do that is like too much. So,
there's no way. There's no way. If you haven't laid the foundation, if you haven't started with the easy week to week normal stuff, there's no way they're going to bring you the big, scary, difficult thing.
No, you're going to find out about it
a different way.
A different way. And again, unfortunately, what we look at is we then go to the symptomatic, right? You say, let's just throw everything we can as getting this feel better, rather than, wait, we got to deal with this in a different level. And if you haven't done that, it's a much more difficult of a conversation and journey. And I think the beautiful thing about it is what it does for the dads and the parents, that they will start feeling more healed and open, and
Totally.
allowing them to have that space, which I think is so rare because we have so much going on, and we have, whether it's manufactured by us or in actuality, we have all these burdens and things and risks and problems, and especially in today's world, that we just try and keep it in. And if you can
Yeah,
just like open it up a little bit,
that's
then
it.
it feels a lot more comfortable.
Well, especially given how we started, which was talking about the stereotypes of the roles that men play and the role that women play. Traditionally, the woman is more the nurturer and the emotional conversation haver. At least that's the box that we put that in. And
Yeah.
it's difficult for a lot of guys to even name their emotions, let alone share our
Right.
emotions. And so if we go first in that sense and we initiate with the kid and just say, hey, look, this is what's going on in my day, this is how I feel about it, then we're going to be modeling something that is in an American normal context pretty revolutionary. And that's what I love about what you're doing, is that you're using a traditional thing like making clothes, and we've always worn clothes and there's always been people making clothes, but you're doing it to revolutionize some cultural norms. And I think that's really exciting and really valuable.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun because it's taxing and it's hard. Like having folks buy into the mental fitness concept or some of the other stuff that we do. It's good to go through that process because it teaches us so much. And it's nice to see, kind of like when people walk in and see the wall of paint. It's
Yeah.
kind of good to see that surprise and see that, oh, I didn't think about it this way, or I didn't think this was an option. Oh, you want me to engage? Okay, I don't know if I want to, but I feel kind of comfortable with nothing, no expectations of me, and it's wonderful to go through that process, and that's what we do. That's our job, is to invoke that sentiment, and have someone feel something that either they haven't felt for a long time, or they've wanted to have an opportunity to have an outlet for it.
Yep. Yep. Bobby, it's awesome. And for people that want these resources, the best place to go would be fodada.com.
Correct. Yeah, everything is there for now, and we get a tremendous amount of requests. If somebody wants to do a program, if they're interested in continuing something, or even have an idea for something, we're so open. And as you may have seen, we've done these in 22 countries around the world, and we mobilize around them and what they want and what they need. And as long as it's true to what we're doing, then we're happy to help. And we're always looking to really push that narrative of relationships can be incredibly powerful and impactful if we tend to them, and if we look at them as an opportunity rather than just a responsibility. Um, and especially when it comes to dads and kids, it's just, I can't speak enough to it. I think well enough that when you give it a little bit, it's just one of those things that if you want, you can get so much from it.
Yep. Yep. So that's FODADA.com. And on that website, you've got the clothes, which are awesome, that people can purchase right there from your website. You've got the mental fitness resources. We talked about one of those things, just kind of sharing, talking in the car and opening up that line of communication. But you have 5 different ways that men can, well, anybody, but as particularly men, can be intentional about some mental fitness. You've got programs that you're already running, and then in that generous spirit, you've communicated that you're open to new ideas and to opportunities, corporate alliances, and all of the things. So when you do the corporate partnership type stuff, does that mean that Fodada would manufacture the apparel that this other brand would kind of throw their logo on for their big event or for whatever else, kind of a deal?
Yeah. So the way that the corporate and group programs work is, we try and say, you're doing an event, you're trying to have something created. How about we look at having that be impactful, right? So
Yeah.
if they're doing a walk, or if they're just doing a sales meeting, or they're doing an annual gathering of some sorts, of whatever that might be, a launch of a new product, and they say we have to create all this usually junk for it. And our job is to say, let's be more strategic in that sense and say, It's an intentional piece that's really curated around what the message is. And why not say, you know what, we've always wanted to do something about human trafficking. We always want to do something about children's cancer research. We're doing a lot of work in, clean water. Let's have it be something that engages people because it's a good quality item. Let's have it be something that educates people so they say, you know what, I didn't know that. I knew we wrote checks for these things that we do, but now I've learned something. And then the last step would be to empower them and say, when they go home at night and they're having dinner and they want to talk about it, guess what my company's doing, or guess what my group did, or guess what I learned today about X, Y, and Z, and then continuing that so they feel like they want to take the next steps. It's really about something you already want to do, but let's expand it into something that it's not a one and done, or it's not a closed-ended conversation and people feel that they can pass it on.
I love it. Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate it, man. It's great to chat, to be able to connect, to be able to understand and support the cause. Because I'm a dad, and I'm passionate about being a dad, and I love your journey, and I appreciate you kind of sharing these gems with our audience. I encourage people to go to Fodada.com and see what you're all about. And then I'm going to circle back with you, Bobby, not only as this podcast releases, but also to process some things that maybe we might be able to collaborate on in the future.
I would love that very much. And I thank you for the opportunity.
All right.